At the time of the first census in the United States in 1790, the ratio of foreign-born individuals among the white population was estimated to be about 10 to 13%. As the nation grew older, this ratio evolved over the years and currently represents roughly 15% of the national population and 18% of the labor force. The count of foreign-born individuals includes legally admitted immigrants, refugees, temporary residents, and undocumented immigrants who've been living for 1 year or longer in a country other than in which they were born. According to the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, there are over 280 million international migrants around the globe, representing about 4% of the world's population. With about 50 million foreign-born individuals, the United States has the largest number of immigrants globally, but its share within its population is tracking similar to that of many other developed and high-income nations. But how do these numbers translate into economic realities? Growth, wages, taxes, and innovation. Researchers have long noted that immigration often correlates with national economic expansion. For instance, a 2024 Congressional Budget Office report estimated that an increase in an immigrant surge of 1.7 million people per year over a 5-year period would boost nominal GDP by about $8.9 trillion between 2024 and 2034, contributing to a 3.2% higher GDP in 2034. The logic is straightforward. When more people, especially working-age adults, enter a country, the labor force expands, increasing consumer demand. And when businesses have access to a larger workforce and more consumers, the economy typically grows. Studies have shown that between 2000 and 2022, immigrant labor accounted for nearly 75% of the growth in the prime-age US labor force. But the impact on growth grows deeper than just adding more workers. High-skilled immigrants such as engineers, medical professionals, and researchers often bring expertise that complements local talent and increases productivity. We know that immigrants make up a disproportionately high share of the skilled workforce relative to their total population. Immigrants make up about 18% of the United States workforce. On the other hand, approximately 28% of all physicians and 33% of all science and engineering workforce with at least a bachelor's degree in the United States was foreign-born as of 2019. This concentration of immigrant talent in high-skill, high-impact fields illustrate how immigration not only simply expands the workforce capacity, but also enhances innovation, scientific advancement, and healthcare access, all of which drive long-term economic growth through increased productivity. A frequent question is whether immigrants drive down wages for native-born workers. The reality is nuanced. Studies by organizations like the Brookings Institution and the Pew Research Center show that while there may be wage pressures for certain low-skill segments, the overall effect on average wages tends to be neutral, or in some cases slightly positive over time. Here's why. Immigrants frequently work in jobs that native-born workers are less inclined to take. Whether it's seasonal agriculture, certain manufacturing roles, or specialized tech positions, this helps fill labor gaps rather than creating a direct one-to-one competition. Economists often talk about the idea of complementary labor, where immigrants and native-born workers each take on roles that expand business capacity, stimulating job growth in other sectors. A clear example of this can be seen in rural meatpacking communities in the Midwest, where foreign-born workers have played a crucial role in sustaining local economies. A 2019 Urban Institute analysis highlighted towns like Garden City, Kansas, and Storm Lake, Iowa, where native-born populations declined by 10 to 20% between 2000 and 2015, leaving industries like meat processing and agriculture struggling to fill essential positions. During the same period, the number of foreign-born workers in these areas grew up by 25%, offsetting labor shortages and helping businesses not only remain operational, but in many cases expand their operations. This workforce stability had ripple effects across the local economies, keeping schools, grocery stores, and small businesses open while also boosting tax revenues that supported public services. In some areas, immigration even helped reverse population decline, preventing the closure of hospitals and community infrastructure that would have otherwise suffered due to workforce shortages. To understand how this plays out at the community level, I asked Kelly Gauger, Deputy Director of the Office of Refugee Admissions at the Department of State, about the role of resettlement agencies in supporting both refugees and their host communities.
Refugees are welcomed by refugee resettlement agencies that are paid by my office at the State Department, as well as the Office of Refugee Resettlement at the Department of Health and Human Services. So these resettlement organizations, many of them are faith-based, Catholic Social Services or Lutheran Family Services. Some of them are secular, like the International Rescue Committee or the Ethiopian Community Development Council. But what these nonprofit resettlement agencies do, in order to help welcome refugees, they really involve many different parts of the community. So let's just take an example of, let's say Lutheran Family Services of Boise, Idaho. Um, they get a limited amount of money from the State Department and from HHS to help resettle the refugees, but they also rely on volunteers, which are often connected to churches or schools or, senior citizens groups or the Rotary Club. They also need to have connections with employers who often are like hotels or restaurants or meatpacking plants. And so this agents and some, they have to have connections with the police, because a lot of a lot of refugees come from countries where police are basically, they're not really to help you, they're there to make your life miserable. And so they want to connect new refugees with the police to make sure they understand the important role of police in our country. And so what I think arriving refugees do is it helps to create these networks in communities to kind of help welcome them. And I used Boise, Idaho as an example because I think there are actually 2 refugee resettlement agencies in Boise. And refugee resettlement, when you go to Boise, it's just kind of ingrained in the fabric of the community. There are so many people in the community who know about refugees and know about the refugee resettlement agencies. You go to a restaurant and they'll have a fundraiser, saying, any profit we make tonight is going to, like, people are just aware of refugees. And I feel like it kind of helps create community connections and helps a community become a welcoming community for not just refugees, but for all immigrants.
Taxes are a hot button issue. Do immigrants contribute more in taxes than they use in public services like healthcare, education, and welfare? A significant number of immigrants, regardless of legal status, pay sales, property, and income taxes. For instance, an American Immigration Council study estimates that foreign-born individuals paid $652 billion in total taxes and contributed $275 billion to Social Security and Medicare in 2023, representing about 17% of the total contributions received that year. This seems to be aligned with immigrants' share with the overall workforce. Of course, there are real costs associated with integrating new immigrant arrivals such as schools, healthcare, and infrastructure, but several economic studies found that immigrants more than pay it back. For example, a 2024 Cato Institute study suggests that an average immigrant contributes a net present value of $626,000 per person over their lifetimes, turning that initial investment into a fiscal win for America. Entrepreneurship is one of the most transformative ways immigrants contribute to economic vitality. According to the Kauffman Foundation's 2022 Entrepreneurship Index, immigrants are nearly twice as likely to launch a business as their native-born counterparts. And it's not just tech giants we're talking about. Restaurants, small retail shops, construction firms, and local enterprises. The American Immigration Council reports that immigrant-owned restaurants generate $63 billion in annual revenue and sustain over 1.1 million jobs. In construction, the National Association of Home Builders notes that 30% of the workers are foreign-born, many leading firms that build the homes and infrastructure of major American cities. This isn't a recent trend. It's a pattern embedded in America's economic history. Take Procter & Gamble, established in 1837 by William Procter from England and James Gamble from Ireland. Starting with soap and candles in Cincinnati, the company today has a market capitalization of $400 billion, employing 107,000 people with brands like Tide and Pampers. Or consider Pfizer, founded in 1849 by German immigrants Charles Pfizer and Charles Arhart in Brooklyn. Their initial product, medicinal candy, evolved into a pharmaceutical legacy now valued at $200 billion with 88,000 employees. In today's tech hubs, mega companies like Google and Nvidia were co-founded by immigrants in the 1990s. According to a 2022 study by the National Foundation for American Policy, over half of Americans' billion-dollar privately held startups, commonly known as unicorns, were launched by at least one immigrant. Companies like Stripe, SpaceX, and Databricks employ over hundreds of thousands of people and are valued over $1.2 trillion. The Partnership for New American Economy estimates that immigrant-founded firms generated $1.7 trillion in revenue in 2018. In 2022, immigrants accounted for 24% of all US patents, according to the US Patent and Trademark Office. But why is that? What is the single most critical factor that enables immigrant founders to not only launch successful startups, but also scale them in the US market? I asked that question to Güçlü Özenci, Managing Director at the Founder Institute's Washington, D.C. chapter.
Immigrants tend to perform higher because they have to. Because they have taken a huge risk and left everything behind, moved to another country without knowing the system, no support networks at all. So they have to work more than anybody else. This is their only chance, that's what they think. The adversity muscle that they have coming through all those hardships help them strive, adapt, and listen to people. Listen and learn. Listen and understand what the real needs are. This is the first step of customer discovery. Leaving everything behind, meaning leaving their ego behind as well. So as they keep on questioning people, understanding what the real needs are, and adapting themselves, sometimes pivoting as well, helps them grow. They realize that US is the huge market, the biggest market of all, with a lot of potential. They can scale here by keeping on understanding the needs, questioning people, interviewing potential clients, adapting their solutions, and thriving.
Of course, immigration's economic benefits don't come without challenges, and we shouldn't overlook them. Large-scale arrivals can strain resources when localities aren't equipped to respond. Take California's Central Valley, for instance. A 2020 Migration Policy Institute study found that schools in Fresno County, home to many immigrant farm workers, faced a surge in demand for English language programs. Over 20% of the students were English learners, stretching budgets thin for additional support. Healthcare feels it too. In Texas-bordered counties like Hidalgo, the Texas Hospital Association reported in 2022 that uncompensated care for uninsured immigrants hit $200 million yearly, pressuring facilities already short on staff. Cultural integration adds another layer. Beyond our borders, Sweden offers a cautionary tale. After taking in 81,300 asylum seekers in 2014 and another 163,000 in 2015, mostly from Syria and Afghanistan, integration lagged. A 2021 Swedish government study found that 60% of these immigrants remained unemployed after 5 years, and crime rates in immigrant-dense areas like Malmö rose 20% above the national average, linked to isolation and poor language acquisition per Stockholm University research. Germany faced similar hurdles post-2015 when it welcomed over 1 million refugees. In cities like Cologne, a 2023 German Institute for Economic Research Berlin analysis showed that while immigrants filled labor gaps, cultural divides persisted. Only 49% of Syrian refugees spoke conversational German after 4 years, and incidents like the 2016 New Year's Eve assaults tied to North African migrants fueled public backlash, with far-right support jumping 10 points in the most recent election. Policymakers walk a tightrope here, balancing immigration's economic upside with the reality of stretched infrastructure and social services. Well-structured integration policies are key. In essence, immigration can be a net positive for economic growth, productivity, and innovation, especially when carefully managed and supported by robust policies. Yet, it is a complex issue and demands our attention because the stakes are high. If we get it right, we will unlock our economic potential. However, if we get it wrong, we risk division. The choice is ours, to engage with the facts, to shape smart policies, and to ensure immigration is handled in a way that strengthens both our economy and our society.